The project we are currently in is a really interesting one because you picked commercetools as a backend and Vue Storefront next as a front-end application. So I'm wondering about the decision factors to choose commercetools. As we were talking about it before, I know it wasn't an easy decision.
Yes, it wasn't easy, but actually, when you look at commercetools, it's very straightforward. You get drawn to it very quickly. The time-consuming bit is looking at the details. To summarize, really, what commercetools is, why we chose commercetools. Let's start with the chemistry. Like, it's a bullshit-free company, approachable. You have access to people, and they give you honest, valuable feedback. It's API only. It has GraphQL support. It's modular, so you can pick and choose. This is great if you don't want to be dependent on a major platform. So you could, for example, there might be new use cases, or it might not fulfill your expectations, so that you might say, we need to move our catalog to something else, but you can still continue using the checkout. It has a great and complete documentation. Like, you understand the representations, the APIs immediately, and it fulfills most of our requirements. It actually had the best overlap with our requirements compared to all the other platforms. The product data model is very sensible and scalable. Translations are, for example, represented in localizable attributes rather than requiring a whole new store in Magento, for example. The pricing model is flexible, and you have this staging capability. So you can make changes to your products, but publish at the end, either by doing QA or have some other processes. So this allows you to use the catalog as a PIM as well. Whereas, for example, in Magento, you save a product and then it's immediately public.
Yeah. In Magento too, it's changed, but still. So it looks like very well thought and very good decision. But I must ask, what other solution have you considered?
Yeah, so we wanted to give this a due process, right? So I can't just go and say I like commercetools and we go with it. So we have to be sure, because a platform change like this doesn't happen often. You want to make sure that it covers your current needs, but also your future needs, as you won't be migrating probably for another 5-10 years. So we did some market research and looked at 30 platforms.
30 platforms?
Yes, and 10 in detail, including like meeting solution architects, going through each of our requirements and so on.
And can you maybe elaborate on this review process you had in place?
Yeah, so I think first of all, you need to understand your business well. So you need to understand your business, your product, your technology stack. We are very fortunate that most of the original developers and product managers are still with us. So there's a lot of knowledge sitting in our teams. I too have implemented many of the defining parts of the product. So everyone in the team can contribute very well to this project. If you have joined recently and are pushing for change, or if you're like outsourcing this to an agency, the results are only going to be as good as your specifications. So we ended up with a list of over 100 use cases and requirements, including user features, technical capabilities, back office functionality, as well as licensing and support questions. But then it also comes down to your complexity and product vision. How flexible does it need to be? Are your use cases unique? We then looked at the market and compiled a list of platforms to review. The first two platforms, without looking at the markets, were obviously staying with Magento 1 and its natural successor, Magento 2.
Did you take the professional reports like Gartner into consideration?
Yes, we looked at Gartner Magic Quadrant, Forrester. It gave us a first impression of the platforms, because most of them don't really give a lot of information on their websites. It's mainly sales stuff, and you have to sign up, talk to them first before you get something out, potentially even have to sign an NDA. So having 30 platforms on the list, it was clear from the start that we have to narrow down the list. by answering some fundamental questions. Are we going open source? Is it going to be software as a service? Is it going to be API only, headless? And I felt like this is where the implementation starts, really. It is fundamental that the plan works with your use case, the surrounding stack, the business process, but also the skills and budget. If you make these decisions early on, then you end up with just carrying out the path you have defined while you were looking at the platforms. So the implementation really starts quite early.
That's an interesting observation, yeah.
So staying on Magento 1 was not an option for us due to the imminent end of life. And also it would have required us to make like huge investments in building APIs, since the code is in views, models, and controllers. APIs would be new controllers, so you would need to make sure that everything is working as before. And it's outdated, so you would need to make it work with newer technologies. Disclaimer, for example, PHP 7.2 goes end of life in November, so you have to do work to support 7.3. The dependencies would go out of support as well. Payment providers like Adyen are cutting support for Magento 1 merchants. So all that is scary and risky. And then we looked at Magento 2. It seems natural. It's more developer friendly than before with Magento 1, but we have decided against it. And that despite the data migration probably being simpler. So you can be quite sure that the same functionality is available one way or the other. However, the database structure and the challenges out of that are still identical, I'd say. So you need to do all the customizations and improvements again, with the risk that it performs worse at the start. So you need to do a lot of work to make it performant, and then is it going to scale with your future growth? Also, Magento 2, I hear that argument a lot, is Magento 2 can be headless as well. But what percentage of the functionality is supported? Is there a list of this feature is going to be only if you use the front end as well, versus the APIs? And also, for example, the marketplace modules, how many of them are available for APIs? It's all just very unclear. And it felt like missing an opportunity here by just going to Magento 2, because it's a whole new rewrite. If you don't get the benefits out of it, then I don't see much value.
So what are you saying is, to paraphrase it, in your case, upgrading to Magento 2 would be pretty much the same amount of work like migrating to, well, any other platform. Yeah,
so Magento 2 doesn't meet our requirements. So we need to spend time building that functionality like we did over the years. And I'm not talking about just some user features, but fundamental changes. And then also the performance question I raised earlier. So yeah, I think so, at least in our case.